Welcome to the Poisoning Podcast, where we go beyond the headlines to unpack the hidden stories behind substances, addiction, and recovery. Today, I'm honored to welcome Michael DeLeon, a passionate advocate and founder of Steered Straight. Michael's journey, just as inspiring, it's a hard-earned story of redemption, resilience, and purpose. Having endured gangs, drugs, prison, and loss, he now travels a country sharing a powerful message. The belief of, it can't happen to me, is exactly where the danger begins. Whether you're personally affected, support someone who is, or simply want to understand how poisoning, overdoses, and substance misuse really take root, you'll find something in this conversation. Michael, welcome to the Poisoning Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I have been meaning for a while now to reach out, and you were on the Instagram, on the Insta. So thank you for being so easy to connect with. Love your videos there. And I find that what appealed to me is your youth angle. And you speak to how many kids do you think you speak to a year, Michael?
A little over 1 million now. I crossed 16 million the beginning of this school year. So
Wow.
I started, full time probably 2010, but 2007 I really kind of began. So since then to present is a little over 16 million.
So 16 million kids. Well, I'm going to say kids because I'm a
Yeah.
mom and that's how I think of them. But let me tell you, if I tell my 14-year-old he's a kid, he's like, no, I'm a teenager mom. He's ready.
Yeah.
He's ready. He's ready to rule the world. So I find that just wonderful because prevention and education, I think, is lacking in our latest epidemic. And you've spoken so powerfully about the illusion that young people have, that addiction just won't happen or doesn't happen to me, right? So what do you think fuels that sense of invincibility among teens these days?
Everything is changing so rapidly with social media, with AI, with technology, and then with seeking remedy. We're the only country in the world that puts direct-to-consumer marketing of pharmaceutical drugs on television sets. So Canada, Australia doesn't even do that. The UK, Germany doesn't even do that. Our pharmaceutical industries control the media, and their money for advertising controls the narrative. And so kids think there's a pill for this and a pill for that. You need this, you need that. And it's just completely out of control. And with that whole foundation, that whole theory, that whole ideology about a remedy in a pill, a remedy in a liquid, or a remedy in a medicine, that really fueled the marijuana legalization catastrophe. I believe we are where we are because of marijuana legalization. Fentanyl is a weapon. It's not a drug. I tell people all the time, the fentanyl that's killing kids in the streets is not the same fentanyl that's in the hospital. And fentanyl is not new. I was in my addiction for many, many years, and I shot fentanyl, straight fentanyl, for years, 10 years probably. We called it China White. Fentanyl is not new. It's been around. It was invented in 1960, for crying out loud, but it's been in the streets. We used to call it China White, China Girl, and imported it into this country. It was just pure heroin. Well, it wasn't heroin at all. It was fentanyl. And now the fentanyl that's pouring into our country is not fentanyl. It's a synthetic poison. And the purpose of it is to destroy our country. And a lot of people just totally disagree. But we don't educate our kids on the dangers of this. And I think that 10 cents of every dollar that's spent on this issue is spent on prevention. So, my grandmother had a fantastic saying when I was a kid, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You're much better off with 1 ounce of prevention than 16 ounces of a cure. And we are spending all the money on detox, on treatment, on incarceration, on prosecution, on drug court, on Narcan, the Naloxone, which I'm 100% in favor of. But this isn't the solution. This is a tool, and it only works in a very small part of this whole catastrophe. But it's not fentanyl, it's not heroin, it's not cocaine, it's not meth. It's alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. I mean, I coined the term the Trifecta Gateway. That's the Trifecta Gateway: alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. Alcohol is a depressant, nicotine is a stimulant, and THC, the psychoactive molecule in the marijuana plant that gets you high, that's a hallucinogen. And those are the three drugs I began with at age 11. And those are the three drugs that 96% of every single person who struggles with addiction begins with. So if we don't prevent this from happening in the first place, I don't care how many prisons, how many treatment centers that we open, we're never going to solve this problem unless we prevent it from starting in the first place. And the only place we can stop it from starting is with our children.
Yeah. Yeah, I just pulled up, we spent over 740 billion annually in expenses related to crime, lost work productivity, and healthcare, all towards
740
addiction.
billion.
Yeah.
So we could completely fund WIC. We could completely fund SNAP. We could, end hunger in our country. Um, I'm just heartbroken, just heartbroken. I get up every single day motivated to go reach kids. I had a little over 1,000 kids yesterday at 3 schools in Kentucky, and the greatest comment or testimonial or accolade that a kid will say to me is like, they said we were having this stupid drug talk. I thought it was going to be another drug assembly, but you really changed my mind on so many things, And I get kids to come up and give me their vapes. So I have this funny story
Yeah.
of something that happened to me in Idaho. And I get kids to come up and give me their vapes. So I was at 3 middle schools yesterday, a 6th grade, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade. And so this is what I got yesterday. I got 5 vapes. It wasn't a big day. I was disappointed in myself, but 5 vapes. But these 2 vapes right here are THC. They're dab pens. They're marijuana vapes. They came from a 6th grader and a 7th grader. So a 12-year-old child and a 13-year-old child vaping THC marijuana. And these are very high potent THC vapes. Very high potent THC vapes.
Yeah.
And so they're not smoking a joint. They're not eating half an edible. They're not hitting a bong one time. They are sitting there vaping this pink starburst and blueberry mango melon. It tastes great to them. And they're completely high throughout the day. And teachers don't know what to do. So I just looked at October. I collected 530 vapes in the month of October. 517 vapes in the month of October. And 230 of that 517 was THC. So 2 of the 5 I got yesterday were THC. So 230 out of 517 vapes I collected in the month of October from children, elementary school, middle school, high school kids. 230 out of the 517 were THC marijuana vapes. It's easier now for a kid to get a marijuana vape than it is to get a nicotine vape in some states. Not where I live. Tennessee is out of control, but it's almost easier in some states to get a marijuana vape for a child. And so you're talking about the developing brain. An 11, 12, 13-year-old child, their brain's developing, We are messing with the development of our children's brains. So the sense of invincibility, I think they get a lot that from social media, years and years and years of the person dying in one episode and coming back in the next episode, invincibility is kind of a defense mechanism for some kids. They don't want to feel vulnerable. They don't want to feel like it could happen to them. So they say, well, no, it's never going to happen to me. When I start the assemblies in middle school and high school, I have an interesting engagement piece in the beginning. And I say, I've already shown the prison cell that I was in. I've already talked a little bit about my story. I show them where I ended up. And then I say, listen, how many of you in this audience is going to end up in prison like me? Raise your hand. Who's going to prison? And nobody raises their hand. I said, nobody? Not one student in here is going to go to prison? No one's going to go to prison. There could be 1,000 kids in front of me. No one's going to go to prison. Okay. How many of you know a family member, a friend, a neighbor, acquaintance? How many of y'all know someone, adolescent or adult, who has ruined their life with drugs and alcohol? And 90% of the kids raise their hand. How many of y'all know a kid or an adult that's gone to jail and prison because of drugs and alcohol? And 90% of them raise their hand. How many of them know somebody who went to jail and prison because of drugs and alcohol, but then they got out and then they went right back on drugs and alcohol and went right back to jail and prison again. And they all raised their hand. So you all know someone that it's happened to, but it's not going to be, they don't think it's going to be them. So my job, I feel, is to convince kids that what happened to me would happen to all the parents and families of all these precious souls that we've lost to addiction, that it can happen to them. I'm hoping it doesn't. That's why I'm here. I don't want it to happen to you, but I want you to understand that it can. If you make the choices and the decisions that I made, it's very likely going to happen to you, and you don't want it to happen to you. So make the best choices and the best decisions. Prevention and education is the absolute key.
No, I very much agree. And I'm curious, KFF Health News just put out their latest diagnosis, I will call it, on the opioid settlement money spending for the last year. So it'll be very interesting. I haven't been able to delve into it yet, what we are spending on prevention. There's some of it out there. I'm just not sure what it is as a percentage of all that money.
I try to stay optimistic that it's going to go to the right places. But if you go back and look at the tobacco settlement money and how Mitch McConnell orchestrated the payout and where all that money went to, it didn't go to preventing people from starting cigarettes. And we shouldn't even have cigarettes in this country at all. We should have eliminated cigarettes, tobacco products, in 1994 when the tobacco hearings happened. But they spent that money on roads and they spent that money on pet projects and infrastructure, and it lined political pockets, unfortunately.
There are definitely, and I have no idea about Senator McConnell's involvement, but, there were like skating rinks built. And while I think building community is very key, I just don't know that like ice skating rinks are going to really prevent, addiction rates.
Right.
So no, it is a very, very important topic. So why do you say that THC vapes are more accessible than just straight up nicotine vapes for children?
Because there's no regulation on it. And I know people say there's regulation, there's not. In 2018, again, not to pick on Mitch McConnell, but he orchestrated the legalization
in Kentucky. You always love this guy.
Yeah, he's been carrying big tobacco's water for 54 years, and it's irrefutable. I try not to disparage any politician. There's good people on both sides. There's devils on both sides, but Mitch McConnell orchestrated the legalization of marijuana in all 50 states. And in 2018, the Farm Bill was coming through Congress, and it's a very important bill. 75% of the Farm Bill funding is for SNAP, food stamps. And I'm telling you, most of America didn't know what SNAP was. They are not concerned about food stamps. It didn't really get any news until recently because people are cut off from SNAP this month, right? Anyway, the Freedom Caucus wanted to gut food stamps in 2018. And Paul Ryan got up in front of the Freedom Caucus and to the press and said, we're going to gut food stamps. It's not a political opinion. That's what he said. We're going to gut food stamps. Well, the Democrats wouldn't go along with it. So in November of 2018, the Democrats lost the House of Representatives. So the purse strings are going to go back to Pelosi in January. Democrats are going to take over the House and the purse strings. So Paul Ryan gets up at the end of November after they lost the House, and they said, we're going to have to do something right away. If we don't get this done and negotiate with the Democrats, Pelosi will never bring it to the floor. We'll never get food stamp adjustment. We'll never get any traction done with this. We're going to have to negotiate with the Democrats. And they did. And the Democrats and the Republicans signed the Farm Bill in December of 2018. Well, it went off to the Senate, and it had to get passed in the Senate, come back for reconciliation, and go to Trump so he could sign it. Well, Mitch McConnell gets the Farm Bill, and he says, I'm adding one thing to the Farm Bill. It's called industrial hemp. Now, a lot of people have heard of hemp, but very few people understand hemp is marijuana just like cannabis. Cannabis and hemp is both marijuana, but nobody ever smoked hemp because you'd have to smoke a barrel of hemp to get high, and you would get sick long before you got high. But there are psychoactive molecules in the hemp plant, And they learned, the marijuana industry learned very early on in legalization that they could genetically modify these marijuana molecules in the hemp plant at a far reduced cost with less water, easier than they could GMO cannabis molecules. So they went to Mitch McConnell. If you bury hemp legalization in the Farm Bill, we can legalize marijuana in all 50 states. For decades, I've been hearing people say we got to legalize marijuana federally, and every person who's been for it has been a Democrat. Again, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. The Republicans and the Democrats, bipartisan, passed marijuana legalization federally in 2018. When they legalized hemp, they legalized marijuana. So it gets back to the House for reconciliation. It gets to Trump. And when President Trump signed the 2018 Farm Bill, he legalized marijuana in all 50 states. Now, so many people say it's a loophole. Nobody knew that that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's an absolute lie. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew if they legalized hemp, they'd legalize marijuana in all 50 states, but they did so with no age restrictions because it wasn't a drug. So in 2018, you can walk into any vape shop, smoke shop, gas station in America and buy a hemp-derived THC product at the age of 10 with no regulation whatsoever. And it's not tested and it's not vetted and it's not itemized ingredients. So there's no regulation of it whatsoever. So I could show you a chart of all 50 states, and there's 50 different policies, 50 different procedures, 50 different approaches to marijuana, hemp-derived THC. But the problem is all these drug dealer, retailer, commercial, industrial manufacturers are putting everything in these devices, and they're selling it in stores and labeling it hemp-derived, and it could be cannabis-derived. And much of what I've tested is cannabis derived. So for you to go into a legal state, New York, Arizona, California, Alaska, Colorado, New Jersey, and buy a cannabis product in a cannabis dispensary, you walk in the door, they're going to take your license, they scan it. That doesn't seem to bother anybody that they're capturing your data. But you walk into a marijuana dispensary and they're scanning your license. They know you're 21. You can't walk in that store unless you're 21. You can't walk out of there with any product unless you're 21. That's a dispensary. You could go into any smoke shop and vape shop and gas station throughout this entire country, and you could buy hemp-derived THC with no oversight whatsoever. So online is out of control. Out of control. These companies are selling all these products online. Kids are using their parents' credit card and buying them on the website and having UPS deliver drugs right to their door. And the entrepreneurs in the school, the entrepreneurs in the school are very creative. I had a kid come up to me the other day, Hispanic kid, and he kind of said, how many kids gave you their vapes? And I said, 7 so far, but it's only the first assembly. He said, yeah, you probably won't get too many. I make too much money in this school selling vapes and selling weed. And I was like, okay, well, hopefully the kids will stop. But I mean, what am I going to do? Run and tell the principal what the kid said? Run and tell the counselor what the kid said? You got a kid in this school selling vapes. That's another question that I ask all the kids. How many guys know a kid who's vaping and brings a vape to school? They raise their hand. How many know a store, gas station, shop that sells vapes to kids? They all raise their hand. We are in the middle of a catastrophe, and I'm scared to death of cancer, of heavy metal poisoning, of respiratory disease. I'm scared to death what's going to happen with Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
Right, because a vape it's liquid being heated, and you're in taking in the aerosol product.
Right.
But so much of what's in this is one unknown, really, to the public.
Yes.
Would you agree with that? And it's chemical laden. So if you're really into Maha, you would not be wanting to vape.
Never in a million years. And some people who are Maha vape. RFK vaped until a couple of years ago. Half the Fox Network commentators, Sean Hannity, Greg Gutfeld, they vape, and they're open about it. I'm not disparaging anybody. That's a choice. They're an adult. But in these devices, in these vaping devices, right, is formaldehyde, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerine, and then the metals, mercury, aluminum, cadmium, chromium, lead, arsenic. No regulation whatsoever. Nobody knows what's in it. And the liquid is being heated up to between 200 and 350 degree Fahrenheit. And it aerosols into the lungs. And the membrane on the interior wall of the lung is only a cell thick. So people hear of popcorn lung and they're desensitized to it. That's bronchiolitis obliterans, acute respiratory distress syndrome. We have people dying from this, and this is so potent. The synthetic nicotine is more potent than cigarettes. The THC is synthetic. It's more potent than smoking a joint. It's not safer. It's 10 times worse. And these are developing lungs, kids. I don't want adults to vape, but my concern is kids more than adults.
And the addiction rates are so much, well, addiction is harder for children to overcome than adults, and they can get hooked easier.
Yeah. Yeah, their brains are undeveloped. They're more susceptible to addiction. So there's health consequences, for sure, that America's not really paying attention to. The pharmaceutical industry is paying attention to it, and they're drooling. They're so happy. I mean, the happiest people in the world about the vaping industry is Big Pharma, because they're going to have the solution for all the medical problems. But the developing adolescent brain is more susceptible to addiction, and it's scary.
No, it is. Well, the psychosis, you may not know that you have bipolar issues or some underlying issue, and then you do THC and it brings it out in you. And we've interviewed doctors on this show saying it's like radically hurt teenagers. Like it took them months to recover, and it hurt their like scholarship chances or some sport they were playing in. And, wow, it has consequences that they don't understand. And, I will go back. I don't believe every elected official knew this was going to be the outcome, because when I now think of smoke shops or vape shops, it's just part of the changing landscape of youth substance abuse, right? 10 years ago, was anybody thinking about 7-OH? And that's probably sold right on the same shelves as these vapes.
Yep.
Or right beside them.
Yep. Everywhere I go into vape shops in all 50 states. Everywhere I go. I mean, we have a gas station, a BP gas station. So obviously it's a franchise, but it's a BP gas station. And you walk in the door, it's got 3 panels of plexiglass at the counter, and he's got over 100, I counted them, over 127 products. That's heroin. I don't care what anybody says. Same receptors, same effect on those receptors. 7-0, which is poison, it's heroin, and he's selling it at a gas station. And the profit margin is through the roof. I tell people, think back 10 years ago. How many vape shops were in your town? Now, how many vape shops are in your town now? It's a gold mine. Vape shops is a gold mine. It's drugs. It's addictive drugs. It's not safer than cigarettes. And now they're selling unregulated heroin in a pill. They have heroin 7-0 in vapes now, and that bypasses your liver. So it's really scary what's happening. I read all the writings from the shooter at the Ascension Church in Ohio, who killed those little kids and boarded the doors so the kids couldn't get out of the church, went around and blew up the church windows and killed his kids. In his own words, in his own writing, he has things that he's talking about trans. He has things that he's talking about guns. He made videos, disgusting videos about guns. But in his own writing, vaping ruined my life. I got cancer from vaping. Now, I still can't find out for sure if he had cancer, but in his own words, he said, I got cancer from vaping, but vaping ruined my life. And on some of the bullets, the casings, he wrote marijuana messaging. He said marijuana ruined his life. Marijuana ruined his life. That's what he said. And the girl who did, Audrey Hale, who did the Presbyterian church shooting in Nashville, I know so much about that case. She was using high-potent THC, vaping high-potent THC while she was on testosterone blockers and estrogen pills and other medications for antidepressant and other medications for depression and anxiety while she's vaping high potent THC. So now you have a drug to drug interaction that nobody's even paying attention to. And so it's not marijuana and it's not nicotine. That's what I'm trying to get kids to understand. It's not marijuana. There's a lot of big advocates in the country that are saying this isn't your grandma's stuff, this isn't your
Right.
mom's stuff. But it's not even marijuana. It's not even marijuana. It's completely chemically extracted, genetically modified, commercialized and industrialized poison. And I don't like to focus on one flavor. Like I know there's a lot of people out there focused on fentanyl. Fentanyl, that's all there is. I've never met anybody who started with fentanyl, ever. They evolved to fentanyl after opioids or heroin, and they evolved to opioids and heroin after alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. And that Trifecta Gateway comes 90% of the time to self-medicate trauma. So we're not even getting to the core, which is trauma, unaddressed, medicated, and I don't like to use medicated in that term, but unresolved trauma for children, divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and these phones and these social media reels are brainwashing these kids. And we are in a social health crisis and we are in a mental health crisis, but I just don't want to use those talking points. I can't stand when people just use talking points and, okay, that sounds great. What do we do about it? And the news, that's all they are. 2-minute, 3-minute segments, you get to the end of the 2-minute segments and you're like petrified. You're sitting on the end of your sofa and you're like, oh my God, let's move on to the next news item. Let's move on to the next one. They're just reporting tidbits. We got to get to the core of this problem. People don't understand how bad vaping is, how bad marijuana legalization is, how bad this kratom catastrophe is, because it's not kratom. And kratom, which you mentioned, 7-0, is from kratom. We are in trouble. We're in trouble, Erin. We're really in trouble.
To go back to fentanyl, which is how I got involved in this project, I think there are parents who've lost children because they thought they were taking something that they weren't. Now, maybe it was the first time they ever did a drug. Maybe they were drinking or excessively drinking something else, but I don't think anyone thought death would become that quick to their child, or that the child thought death could come like that. These are longer term problems of people, synthesizing, industrializing other drugs or products into something else for profit.
Yeah, and there's a lot of profit from addiction. Ask any drug dealer. There's profit from addiction.
And I've had now, I think, 3 guests on this fall, just even the corruption within recovery and rehab.
Yeah,
it's greed is out there, and you have to just, be smart about things. So when you share your own story of addiction, incarceration, what kind of questions are you getting from the students in these assemblies afterwards?
So I try to do a Q&A at least 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in auditoriums, in gyms, wherever I am. And a lot of there's actually more comments than questions kids want to share. I've made myself vulnerable. I've explained the horrors of what I did and what happened to me and everything. And they're like, they feel comfortable about talking about it. And then with all the questions that I've asked, they look around at all the other kids raising their hand and they understand they're not alone. How many people know someone in your life that's died from a drug overdose or drug poisoning? And 90% of the kids raise their hand. I don't care if I'm in the bluest of blue or the reddest of red places. It's systemic and it's an equal opportunity destroyer. But kids are looking around. They're like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. So they feel comfortable speaking up. But I very rarely, my 90-minute presentations are so exhaustive and encompassing that I very rarely get kids that ask me about, well, not all marijuana is bad, right? Or my uncle's on marijuana, or my uncle said marijuana cures cancer. You get that once in a while, very rarely, because I have eliminated all that with my education, right? And I tell them the truth. Secondly, I don't ever want a kid going home and telling their parents, I learned all about vaping today, and you're vaping, and you have to stop. I learned all about alcohol today, and you drink, you have to stop. Because they're adults. They're 30, 40, 50 years of age, so their brain's developed. So there's a big difference between kids and adults. So I want to make sure I solve all that so there's no problem. The last thing I want to have happen, and it's never happened to me in 18 years, is a principal or a counselor or a superintendent got a phone call from a parent complaining that their kid came home and was hassling them about this or that, or said it was a horrible petrified assembly and the kid was traumatized. I never had it happen, not one time in 18 years. I have a gift and I know how to do this. Most of my questions that I'm getting asked is like, how's your daughter? How's your son? Are you clean now? How long are you clean? How did you get clean? What do you do when you have a family member that's addicted? What can I tell my friends? What's the advice that you could give me to tell my friends to stop vaping? I don't vape, but my friends do, and I want them to quit. That's a lot of it. I got a razor blade. I got a packet with 3 razor blades from a 7th grader the other day. She came up to me and she says, I don't have a vape, but do you take anything? I go, anything you're hurting yourself with. And so she opens her hands and there's a packet with 2 razor blades and an open razor blade, 3 razor blades, and she hands them to me. And I know why she's giving them to me. She's cutting herself. She's hurting herself. It's self-harm. And she's like, I'd like today to be the last day I hurt myself. I'd like today to be the last day you hurt yourself too. But it's more than just giving up the vape. It's more than just giving up the razor blade. There's a reason why you're doing it. And if you don't get to the core why, you're just going to get another razor blade. So you need to talk to your counselor and you need to talk. And so I give them a card to a 24-hour helpline for kids. And there's a lot of them out there. There's one, You Matter. You could text for help to this text line I have. It's a nonprofit organization, and they talk to kids. But I want you to talk to your counselor, the person that's in your school all day. Most of the questions are about specifics. A lot of kids don't. There's some kids around that never hit a vape, and don't even know what a vape is. I ask, who knows what dab pens are? And it's only about 30, 40% of the kids raise their hand. So to give people hope, most kids are not drinking, most kids are not vaping, and most kids are not doing drugs. Most kids are not doing any of that. I'm telling you, it's about 80%. But I don't want to lose any of these kids. Right. They don't see vaping as a problem. That's why they turn them into me. They don't see vaping as a drug because the tobacco industry knew exactly what they were doing, and they reached back into their strategy and playbook from the 80s and the 90s, and they flavored synthetic nicotine, and they marketed it directly to middle school children. And the FDA let them do it. Under Obama, under Trump, under Biden, the FDA let them do it. And now, I know we're only 10 months into this administration. I'm happy with some of the things that the FDA is doing. They're just not going fast enough. And this is a completely untested, unregulated market. And I have a little farm community, right? And I went back to look how many vape shops they had here just 5 years ago. And there was 3. And now you have to count all the gas stations that are selling it. But gas stations and vape shops and smoke shops in this little farm community in Tennessee that had 3 vape shops 5 years ago have over 60 places selling these products. And I looked about 2 weeks ago, I was able to go to 38 of the 60 places, and 38 out of 38 I went to are selling 7-OH because it's very profitable. I said to this one guy at a place the other day, I said they're going to ban this, the THC vapes in Tennessee. We're trying to ban the THC vapes. And I'm like, don't you think they should ban this first? He said, yeah, this is 10 times worse than THC vapes. I mean, this is legal heroin. That was the clerk behind the counter that said that. This is legal heroin. I'm like, you're absolutely right. I bet you it sells. He goes, it's our top selling product. They care about one thing and one thing only, and that's money. They're selling a product to make a profit. They're a business person. I'm understanding of that. I could never sell a product that's going to destroy someone's life. They have this big, in this gas station I'm talking about, they have this big container called Galaxy gas. It's nitrous oxide. Galaxy gas, nitrous oxide. It's $130. There's about 300 hits in there. and it freezes your brain. And they're selling it in a smoke shop, vape shop with no regulation whatsoever. And I said, how old do you got to be to buy that? And he's like, well, we don't sell anything in here unless they're 21. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay. Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
how many news reports we could talk about here in West Virginia? They're always doing raids on vape shops that are selling to underage kids. And
Yeah,
it just did a big report in Virginia. I think Youngkin was it Operation Magic Dragon? They
yeah,
got like $500,000 worth of products that shouldn't even be sold.
yeah. And honestly, our DEA is not big enough to do that across the country. They could do that every single day in every single state. Honestly, it's that bad. I
Oh,
mean,
no, I agree. I
yeah,
think it's awful. It's a plight right now. It's
yeah,
so bad.
yeah. And I'm
It's
scared. I've been to West Virginia a lot. My family, I mean, the greatest thing that ever come out of West Virginia is my wife. I married the
Mhm.
greatest thing that ever come out of West Virginia. You know, my wife is the greatest thing that ever come out of that state. It's so horrible, you know, Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio. I mean, Governor DeWine, you know, did an executive order to ban all this stuff in stores. And 2 days later, a liberal judge puts a restraining order on the executive order to allow the industry to continue. Our federal Congress is asleep at the wheel. Our state legislators are asleep at the wheel. And there are a couple of people that get this and are trying to make a difference, but there's so many people that are trying to fight it. We're trying to save our kids. I'm more scared about vaping. I know this, not everybody will agree with me, but I'm more scared about vaping than I am of fentanyl, because vaping is going to kill more people than fentanyl ever will. I mean, 300,000 people
Are
die
you
from
saying in
alcohol
the long term?
in the long
In the
run. Yeah,
long term.
yeah. And there is fentanyl in vapes. There's over 138
Mm,
cases. There's 138 cases that I have where the fentanyl was tested in the vaping device, and that's
mm.
nationwide. So there's fentanyl in vapes, and anybody who doesn't believe that, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely argued in the addiction space. I've had people reach out to me when I've had doctors on saying that they've had to revive teenagers. I don't know if it was a vape or how the fentanyl got in with the marijuana
Right.
or pot or whatever it was. That was a doctor from Arkansas. And then I got a lot of pushback after. And in West Virginia, they just reported a 16-year-old girl died from fentanyl when she just thought she was getting some form of marijuana, cannabis, hemp, whatever form that
Yeah.
she was getting, sadly, that 16-year-old, and this was within the month. So,
Yeah,
no,
in
tell me
Nashville,
this.
one of my friends in Nashville lost his 21-year-old son. Alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana as a teenager, and he just thought marijuana was the greatest thing in the world. But he was on meth
Yeah,
every day on meth, and he did meth one day. It had fentanyl in it, and he died. He didn't even know what fentanyl was. His father didn't even know what fentanyl was.
yeah.
He said he died from fentanyl, and the father said, "What's fentanyl?" I knew my son was on meth. He was struggling with meth. We were trying to get him help, but he died from meth with fentanyl in it. Why would anybody put fentanyl in meth? To kill you. Why would
Yeah.
anybody put fentanyl in a Xanax tablet and sell it to you or tell you this is a Percocet? It's not a Percocet. Why would they do that? To kill you. Why else would they do that?
So I want to go back to your family. Do you talk about, so do you get into reconciliation and forgiveness in your talk?
Yeah, I've forgiven everybody. I was sexually abused by a pedophile monster in our school district when I was in middle school. Started in sixth grade and then ended in ninth grade. But I was molested by a man who was a counselor who molested 7 other kids in my school. And when they found out what he was doing, they moved him to Erie, Pennsylvania, so he wouldn't hurt us anymore. And he molested 54 more kids over the next 20 years. And he never went
Mm,
to jail, never answered for his crimes, you know. So, I had to forgive him. And I've listened to so many people, pastors, and so many motivational people like, forgiveness is power for you. You get power for forgiveness. So I've got to forgive the person who hurt me. And kids hear that. Then my mom was murdered because of me. I'm responsible for her murder. The 2 people who killed her were supposed to kill me, and they killed her because I wasn't home. and I had to, forgive the people who killed my mom. And, one of the most touching things that happens to me in schools every single week is some kid will come up to me. Happened yesterday. The girl comes up and she goes, your mom is very proud of you. And here I am tearing up, crying. And she's like, your mom is very proud of you. And I'm like, thank you so much. I so appreciate you saying that. It's not your fault what happened to her. She's very proud of you. I'm like, there's an 8th grade girl telling me this. Forgiveness, reconciliation. I have some funny questions that I'm asking about how many of y'all would trade your brother and sister in if you can get a new brother and sister, how many of y'all have had arguments with your parents? How many of y'all think your parents are crazy? How many of y'all parents think you're crazy? You know what I mean? So you got to have humor in this whole thing. It's because you just can't go in and scare kids, and you just can't go get and petrify kids, and you can't go in and traumatize kids. You got to do all of this to convince them that what happened to me could happen to them, so it doesn't happen to them. I love what you said earlier. It can't happen to me. Years ago, I coined the term, it can't happen to me-ism. I took ism, ISM, and I put it at the end of the term, it can't happen to me. And that's the disease that I had. It's not going to happen to me. That can't happen to me. Well, it did happen to me. And it happened to her, it happened to him, it happened to her. Why? Why is it happening to because where it begins. And so I'm more interested in getting the kids to understand that they've got to reach out to people in their school. They've got to talk to their counselor. They've got to talk to their coach. They've got to talk to their principal and their teachers about what's going on. I'm more interested in getting kids to understand trauma and mental health illness than I am educating them about drugs. Every kid that I see gets 5 educational booklets, and people say kids don't read. That's untrue. Okay, kids don't learn online. If you give an app to a kid about drugs, they'll never learn a darn thing. You got to give it to them in hard copy. Can you supplement it with digital? Yes. Supplement it with virtual? Yes. Videos. But we are ruining these generations' life right now with 6-second reels, and they're losing their attention span. So you have to give them something hard copy that they can learn. So I collaborated with an organization out of Orlando, Florida called Victoria's Voice Foundation. And David and Jackie Siegel, David Siegel owned Westgate Resorts. The Siegel family still owns it and operates it. And they're amazing people, and they lost their 18-year-old daughter, Victoria, to an overdose of drugs. And 2 weeks after the funeral, mom found her diary in her nightstand. And they were 2 clueless parents. I'm not saying that. That's their words. They missed all the signs. They had no idea their daughter was struggling with addiction. And they got glimpses of it at the end, but they didn't know what to do, because where's the manual on how to be a parent? But where's the manual on how to be a parent of a kid experimenting with drugs and alcohol? So the diary answered all the questions. So we published the diary as a cautionary tale. And we went to the DEA and we got all this information and wrote all these educational chapters at the back. And when I tell you, one of the biggest email feedbacks I get from schools all across this country, I haven't seen kids read books like this in a decade. These kids won't put this book down. And that's what I want to make happen. And it's happening, and it's phenomenal. But I got to get kids to understand the education of it, but I only have 90 minutes in front of them. So it's more important for me to talk to them about finding their purpose, finding the purpose of your life. You were created with value and purpose, and there's a why. You are here for a reason. You, all different reasons, but everyone's here for a reason. There's a why, and you got to fulfill and give your life meaning and find your purpose. And you can find that purpose in middle school. You can find that purpose in high school. You can find that purpose in college, vocational trade school, the military. I just don't want you to find it in prison. And I want you to live long enough to find your purpose. And if some kid has a pill and says here, and it's got fentanyl in it, you're never going to find your purpose. If some kid says, here, hit my vape, and there's fentanyl in it, you're not going to ever find your purpose. If some kid wants you to go out to a party and drink and then get in the car with the person who's driving, who's impaired, and you die in a car accident. I mean, the 4 kids, volleyball players in Los Angeles a week and a half ago, 4 kids in an apartment dead, snorting cocaine, laced with fentanyl. They're gone. 4 kids, star athletes, volleyball players, team is devastated. It makes the news cycle for 1, maybe 2 days. And America's moved on. We've moved on. The families haven't moved on. The siblings haven't moved on. You know, we've got to get kids to understand this doesn't just affect them. It affects their life. So I just don't want to focus on one flavor, but I'm talking to them about purpose. I'm talking to them about finding their purpose and the why that they're here. more than anything else. And then I dropped the educational components in there. My whole vaping
Yeah.
section is about 17 minutes of the 90 minutes. And THC is about 4 minutes of the 90 minutes. And then my story is 15 minutes of the 90 minutes. The rest is about finding out who you want to be, finding out what makes you happy, and then if you're not happy, if you're struggling, knowing that you can talk to. And part of it, I say to the kids, I was on a plane and we're talking to the lady next to me, and she said, "So what do you do for a living?" And I told her. She says, "Oh, really? Why'd you go to prison?" And I said, "Because I didn't ask for help." She goes, "What?" "Yep, I went to prison because I didn't ask for help. Because when I was in 5th grade, if I raised my hand and asked for help, I wouldn't have been on drugs. I would have never tried drugs. I wouldn't have been where I was not supposed to be, and I would have gotten the help that I needed, and I would have avoided and had a different life." That's the message that they walk away with.
So what follow-up? You come in, you do your 90-minute presentation, you get these vape cartridges, which is amazing, and I love those photos. But then what do the schools do after? What
So
leave behind follow-up to this presentation? Because I love it, but is once enough?
no, never. Not with me, not with anything. So continuing education, the Victoria's Voice diary, and I'll send you a
Mhm.
copy of it. You'll be really impressed. It's left behind with high school kids because it's a little mature for middle school kids, but it's left behind with staff and high school students, and they read it, and then we've got an exercise in it to pass it on. Then we built a curriculum for parents on this book
Yeah.
because David and Jackie missed the signs. I don't want any parents to miss the signs. So we created a curriculum for parents based on this book, and we encourage the kids to take it as well. Then I have 2 curriculum on my website that I promote in the assemblies, and I ask the kids to go download it. This is so cool. This is amazing. It'll change your life. Anybody's got dreams? They all raise their hand. How many of y'all want your dreams to come true? They raise their hand. I'm telling you, your dreams will come true if you do this curriculum. I give it to the school, but I can't rely on the school to give it. I have to give it to the kids. So they go and download it, and the feedback we get off this curriculum is profound. Then we've got 8 curriculum that we give to the school, and it's based on evidence-based practices. They're very efficient. Efficacy levels are high. They're very innovative. But we give all these to the schools, and then we give every single staff member in the school drug education curriculum that they can teach and weave into their lesson plans. Then we have 2 additional curriculum for parents, and we ask the school to email it home to every parent. Then I shot a 75-minute video for parents, and I asked the schools to email it to every single parent. Now, can I make a parent open it up and watch it? No. Can I make a parent take the curriculum? No. Can I make the staff take the curriculum? Can I make the schools prevent the curriculum? No. I have a big banner, an 8-foot banner that I send to every school, and I ask the kids to make a pledge before they walk out. Sign this banner and make a pledge to your life today. And you're not pledging me. You're not pledging your school. You're not pledging your parents. You're pledging yourself. You're making a promise to yourself. And why would you ever break that promise? If you make a pinky promise to yourself, why would you ever break that promise? And that banner is going to hang on the wall of your school every day. And as you walk down the hallways, you're going to look at it and you're going to see your name. It's going to remind you every day that you made a promise to yourself that when someone asks you to get high or drink alcohol or hit a vape, you're going to say no. It's a reminder in your school. You're going to say no. And I want you to say no. So there's a reminder. Now, I try to go back to the schools on an ongoing basis. When the middle school kids are in the high school, I try to go back to the high school and do a different presentation. They know me. They heard my story. I don't have to share my whole story. Instead of 15 minutes, it's 7 minutes. But some of the kids didn't see me because they came from other schools, so I have to get most of the story in there. But follow-up is the key, and continuing education is the key. But I love the saying, we can't let perfect be the enemy of the good. So
Sure.
a drug assembly, the drug talk is not effective. It's not going to work. But mine is the spark that lights a fire better than any other one in this country, and I provide more continuing education to the schools than anybody else does. So all of this continuing education is going to the schools. When I go to the schools, some of the kids aren't going to put the vape in my hand. They're not going to give it to me. So I get the schools to make vape boxes. I want to get the art teacher involved and the art class involved and get the kids to make these cool boxes. They have made the coolest vape boxes. A volcano was made by a school last week. A volcano. Don't inhale the lava inside the vapes, you know. And there was a slit in the volcano that kids could put it in the volcano. And then we asked the schools, leave it in the counselor's office. Put this in your, nurse's office, somewhere where kids feel comfortable that if they find a vape, or they decide to think about what I'm saying, and then the next day come in and put their vape in that box, they can go do it. And then we print out 10-step guide to vaping, and we leave it in every nurse's office. And we say to kids, if you got a friend that wants to quit vaping and they don't know how to quit, go get one of these guides in the nurse's office, and you could give it to them, and they'll know what to eat, dark chocolate, what to drink, electrolytes, what to do, music, meditation, therapy, walking. We give all this 10-step guide on how to quit vaping. So it's not just the assembly. It's not just a talk. Then after school, I want all your staff. About 1/3 of the schools I go to do a professional development workshop after school. Okay. And I tell you, the number one reason that they don't is the teachers' unions don't allow teachers to stay after school and learn the most critical, vital stuff that's going to help them in their daily lives. But whatever. But when you give me your staff after school, I want 1 hour to 90 minutes, and I'm going to educate the staff. And then at night, I want the parents and I want the community. Open it up to every school district within 30 miles. Tell everybody to come, bring in your mayor, bring in your law enforcement, and let me do a community night. Sometimes I get 90 minutes. Most times it's an hour. But I want to get the village on the same page, because that's what it takes, the village. So I try to give as many tools to the school to use on an ongoing basis as I've possibly been able to come up with.
It's amazing. Well, you are very politically opinionated, Michael. So I do have a question. If you were president, what would be one policy change you would make around addiction?
Oh my gosh. I need 100 policy changes.
No, you get one. And you may run. I feel like you want to run for office. You've got some.
Yeah, well, now I wouldn't be the first ex-convict president. You know what I mean? So Trump opened that door. I love so much of what Trump is doing. I love so much of what RFK is doing. I love so much of what people are doing. And I got a lot of Democrats that I believe in them, and I know their heart's in the right place. But I just don't like a person. I love John Fetterman. I think he's one of the most badass Democrats there is. You're not going to tell me how to think because I'm part of a party. I don't buy into groupthink. I think groupthink is poisonous on the right and the left. On the right and the left, no, speak out what you're against. Stand for what you are in office for. Wow, one policy change for addiction. I mean, I would wipe out the entire hemp industry. I would wipe out the entire synthetic drug industry. You're never going to close Pandora's box on marijuana legalization. It's never going to happen. Marijuana legalization is here to stay. It's never going away. But it's really not regulated like it should be, like they say it is. But if you're going to have dispensaries, have these products in dispensaries. I would wipe out the ability for any synthetic drug, 7-0, Kratom, THC, Delta-8, Delta-10, mushrooms, Silibin. They're selling mushrooms in gas stations in my town. They are selling psychedelic mushrooms at gas stations in my town and all across the country. So I would make every synthetic drug that's not FDA approved, I would force it to all be sold in cannabis dispensaries instantaneously. And that wouldn't solve the problem. I guarantee it solves 75% of the problem. It solves 75% of the problem. And that cannabis industry is the same people who's selling it in the gas station. All these people, you'll never really see the marijuana industry outraged at Delta-8 and Delta-10. They should be the most upset there is because they're taking business away from them. Why would I want to go buy cannabis and pay 38% tax at the dispensary when I could go buy a Delta-8 vape pen for $20 at the gas station and I get the same damn high, same high? Why aren't they upset? Because they're the ones that made it. They're the ones controlling this whole thing. The most, I just really have to couple that with what Patrick Kennedy really tried to do by getting, addiction treatment, part of mental health, and get insurance companies to cover it. I love what Trump said yesterday. Stop giving all this money to these, money sucking insurance companies. I don't ever believe in violence. What happened to that CEO of United Healthcare is an absolute travesty, a disgusting thing that happened. You don't murder anybody. You don't murder anybody. You hate a person, but you don't ever murder. Violence is unacceptable in any way, shape, or form. At the same time, I can understand the hatred against the insurance industry. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. I understand why people want to see 7-0 continue to be sold. I know people that are on 7-0 tablets that are in excruciating pain for fibromyalgia and other things, and they can't get opioids. I just found out that I have 2 herniated discs.
Prescription, that they can't get
They can't get opioids.
pain relief from covered by their health insurance, not opioids on the street.
Right. And both in Tennessee, like I have 2 herniated discs in my back, 4 and 5. I had no idea. I just have back pain, but it's getting so unbearable that I don't use opioids. I'm in recovery from it. I don't use opioids. Obviously, if I got in a car accident, ended up in the hospital, you better shoot all the opioids in my body because I don't want to be in pain as long as I'm in this controlled environment with nurses at my bed every single day and a doctor visiting every day. I don't mind opioids if I need opioids. I'm not stupid, but I have such excruciating pain that I went to my doctor. I'm like, I'm telling you, I can't take it. I am in tears when I walk out of my 4th school of the day. And he says, I could give you some ibuprofen 800. I'm like, okay, I'll take the ibuprofen 800. And every day, my wife FaceTimes me when I'm on the road, and I lay all my pills out on the bathroom counter, and we count them together. Not for her. She's not worried about me. I want accountability for myself. And it wasn't working. And I said, I got to have some hydrocodone. Give me 5 milligrams, just something very, very minor. In the state of Tennessee, he can give me 12. That's it. Well, I made 12 last 3 weeks. And I call him up again. I was like, could you refill that prescription? I made it 3 weeks with 12 tablets, and you're supposed to take 1 every 4 hours. I took 12 over 3 weeks. I called him up, and I'm like, I'm going to need a refill. He says, you're going to have to come in and see me. You can't call in a refill for 12 hydrocodone? I used to eat 40 perk 30s a day. Okay. Do you understand? Hydrocodone is not a big deal for me. He goes, I'm sorry, state of Tennessee, I can't lose my license. You're going to have to come see me again for a hydrocodone refill. I was like, oh my God. So I made it back in the next week. He refilled it. I ate 3 so far. I still have 9 left, but I needed an MRI to find out what's going on. United Healthcare has denied my MRI 3 times over 5 months. I finally said, I'm going to have to pay for it myself. So the radiology company says $691. I just paid on my credit card $691 for my own MRI. And you know what they found out? Major herniated disc at 4, major herniated disc at 5, and arthritis so bad in 4, 5, and 6 lumbar that they want to send me to a spinal surgeon to take the bone spurs that are building up on my back. United Healthcare wouldn't give me my MRI. I had to pay for it out of my pocket. And I'm not well off by any stretch of the imagination. Me and my wife are so broke, we can't pay attention, Erin. You know what I mean? But how many people out there are in that situation and they don't have a credit card with $691 that they can go get their own MRI on?
Right now is not everyone's best financial times, I think.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
I just want everybody to have the best life. I don't want anybody in pain, physical or mental or emotional. I don't want anybody hurting anybody. I don't want no one fighting. All these stupid videos of people fighting each other and beating each other and shooting each other. It just is crazy. Against Trump because he's trying to send National Guard into cities and okay with 17 homicides in a weekend in Chicago and 42 shootings. It's just wrong. We got to come together. I don't care how Democrat you are or Republican you are. I had a kid come up to me the other day. He goes, you're a Christian, aren't you? I go, yeah. He says, well, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. And I'm like, and I respect your belief. Totally believe it. I pray for you to my God that you don't believe in, but I respect your belief. I'm not going to sit down and try to convince him that there's a God and he's wrong. He's not wrong in his mind. I want to get him to believe in a higher power. I want him to get him to believe in God, but it's not the time and the place. And I don't want a kid to feel like I'm against them. You know what I mean? I got people that disagree with me on kratom. I got people who disagree with me on vaping. I got people who disagree with me on marijuana. Okay. And let's agree to disagree. And then let me show you the real, because what we didn't talk about is who's running our marijuana industry in this country. There's a documentary that was done in Maine called High Crimes. And I'm not a huge fan of Tucker Carlson. I like some of the things he says, and I don't like some of the things he says. But his network put a documentary up called High Crimes. He had nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with Tucker Carlson, but he put it on his network. This kid, on his own dime, investigated all the grow operations in Maine for marijuana, and he found out that 90% of them are run by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. And now there's a new documentary I'm having the honor to work on, finding the exact same things in Oklahoma. 85% of all marijuana grow operations in this country, according to the DEA, are owned, run, and controlled by the CCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party. That should scare the heck out of every Democrat and every Republican and every independent in our country. That should scare Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul and Mike Johnson and Cory Booker. That should scare every single person in this country. And it doesn't. And for the life of me, I don't understand why. So
Well, they allowed the precursors. They allowed the precursors to fentanyl to flow so freely.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. I wish I went to South Korea with Trump and met Xi, because I would have been sitting up straight in my chair. I would have been talking to Xi like, what do you mean you're going to decrease the amount of precursors that are coming into our country? How about it ends today? How about it ends today? Okay. And he should have done that in his first administration, and Biden should have done that in his administration. These poisons are pouring into our country. What do you mean? Like, this has to change. But we can't do it over the next 3 administrations. We've got to do it right now. We got kids dying. Fentanyl is a poison, and it's a weapon of mass destruction. And the whole reason it's here is to murder and kill our children. And I'm scared. And the moms and dads that have lost their kids, the siblings that have lost their brothers and sisters, the kids that have lost their parents, this is crazy. This is beyond crazy. And we have to come together to solve the problem together.
I agree. Everyone has to work together. So I'm going to ask you one last question. After hearing so many stories from the young people you speak to and families, what gives you hope right now?
The kids saying, I had no idea. I'm so glad you came to my school. I wish my brother could have heard you. He died of a fentanyl poisoning last year. I get teachers. I must have had 5 staff members come up to me yesterday between the time I finished and the time I walked out the front door. The last person that saw me as I was walking out the door, the secretary, I was walking out this front door and I waved to her, and she got up and came out and she hugged me and she said, I've had so many kids and so many staff members come down here and said it was the best presentation they ever saw in their life. I lost my daughter to a fentanyl overdose last year, and she's tearing up and she goes, thank you. Thank you. Because I'm telling you, I get goosebumps, the hair on my arms standing up. I don't think you can see it, right? I get goosebumps when that happens to me. And I go out in my car and I cry. You know, I'm on the verge right now. I go out in my car and cry. And I swear, Aaron, I swear to you. And first of all, you're a friggin' rock star. Since meeting you, I've gone back and watched so many of your podcasts. Like, you're an absolute rock star. And now I follow your husband, who's a cool dude. Like, and
I don't know if you want to do that. You might not agree with him.
I agree with him on some stuff, a lot of stuff, actually. No, that's, if Cory Booker would sit down with Mike Johnson, they would agree on 90% of everything. I really believe that. If Kamala Harris and Trump would sit down, I guarantee you they would agree on 90% of everything. I really do believe Kamala Harris' heart's in the right place. I believe Trump's heart's in the right place. I really do. Maybe I'm some stupid optimist. The glass is always, always, always half full, And whether it's half full or half empty, it's always refillable. That's what I tell people. Well, the glass is half full. No, the glass is half empty. Well, whether it's full or empty, it's refillable. I want everybody to come together. The stuff that we disagree with, we could put that aside. But I swear to you, I get so jaded. I'm so tired. I'm so
Yeah.
sick. Another kid dead, another kid dead, another mom screaming at another mom. Watching these moms at these fentanyl rallies in Washington, D.C. go on their Facebook page and attack each other. A mom cursing out a woman because her child wasn't on the billboard that your child got onto and my daughter died
Mm,
first. I'm like, I've seen the
mm,
craziest things. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
yeah.
You got to be kidding me. What gives
Well,
me
there's
hope?
a lot of hurt. There's a lot of hurt. This is the hurt that the
Yeah,
children you're speaking to. It's a different
yeah,
level of hurt and trauma
yeah,
that they have to learn to cope with and get help
yeah.
with because of you've forgiven. I'm sure there are family members. I hope your family members have forgiven you. No,
Not, no. I
not
got a
yet.
sister with 7 kids. I've never met any of them. I got a brother with 4 kids.
Mm,
I've never met any. My brother and sister never forgave me for what happened to my mom, and that's on
mm,
them. I got a biological son that my ex-wife turned against me, and he's never, reached out. And I just give that boy to God. I give him to God. I give
I'm
everything to
sorry.
God. I can't worry about it. God has blessed me beyond the wildest, wildest imagination. I told you, I married this unbelievable redhead from West Virginia, the greatest girl God ever made. Uh, I know your husband will disagree with me, but you're the second best girl. You're the second best girl that came out of West Virginia. I have a wife I don't deserve. I have a mission that I don't deserve, and I take it very, very
Mm,
seriously, and I take it very personally. And what gives me hope is these kids. They're the authenticity generation, this Gen Z, they're the authenticity generation because they know they're being lied to every single day. They know they're being
mm.
lied to, and they're looking at us like, what do you mean biological men can get pregnant? No, that's not true. What do you mean? These kids
Back to
are
the
like,
drug, back to the addiction topic. Michael,
yeah,
you're cracking
th-
me up.
these kids, you know, these kids are absolutely out of their mind looking at our generation like that's not true. And it's really distancing them from so many of these people because they don't feel they can talk and trust the adults. They don't. And so when I ask one question, how many of y'all know somebody in your school, a teacher, a coach, a cafeteria worker that you trust and you could talk to even easier than some people in your own family? I'm telling you, it's like 90% of the kids raise their hand. So we're in a mental
Mhm.
health crisis, and the phones are really ruining it for so many of these kids. And they're the authenticity generation, and they want to talk, and they want to tell people how they feel, and they want to be understood. And Gen Z and Gen Alpha doesn't feel systemically like they're being understood, or they're being listened to, or they're being appreciated. So what gives me hope is that I'm inspiring them to go seek those people out because those adults do exist. We have beautiful, genuine people in our country that care about other people.
Mhm.
Good people exist. Go find them, go seek
That's
them
right.
out, and have somebody that you can talk to and trust. And
And we're going to end on that note. Michael,
yep.
thank you so much. We will include the links to your social medias and your
Thank,
website in the Substack issue. So thank you for joining us today.
thank you so much. I appreciate you.